Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. Welcome to my craft room. This week's Sew With Me, we are going to be making some drawstring bags. I love drawstring bags. I don't put interfacing in mine, so they're nice and squishy. They're easy to throw into your purse or into another bag and take it with you. Just a little satisfaction of closing it up. I don't know, drawstring bags are just one of my favorites. In this one, I am actually working on knitting a pair of fingerless I'm knitting a pair of fingerless mitts. So for a one skein project, this is great for hats or for socks, for small shawls. You can use it to put toys in for the kids. You can put your toiletries in it to put it in a suitcase. You can put shoes in it. You can make them any size you want, from the teeny tiny coin one all the way up to a really big one to carry maybe a Afghan project in or a sweater project. But today, the one we're going to make finishes, this one's about 10 inches tall, it's about 7 inches wide, and it has a 3-inch gusset on the bottom. I like to have mine, you can make it without the gusset so it lays flat, but I like to have it to be able to sit up like this. And I don't know, I like gussets. Like I said, this one's my favorite. I've been using this one for a couple of years now, but it's about time to add a couple more to my stash, so let me show you how I do them. There's an amazing blogger called In Color Order. It's at incolororder.com, and I use her line drawstring bag tutorial. There's many drawstring bag tutorials online. I like this one because it has a little contrast on the top, and it's just the way it's set up. It's just easy to do. So if you have directional fabric, she says she has it laid out so it's really easy to make sure your prints are always in the upright position. Now this one that we're using from In Color Order, this one is a free pattern. It comes with one size only. But if you really like her pattern, you can go ahead and thank her for it by purchasing the pattern that has multiple sizes in it. It comes with 8 sizes and instructions on how to customize it to any size you want. So for this bag, I have my 2 main exterior fabrics. I've cut them at 9 inches by 10.5 inches based on the pattern. And if you have a print that's going a specific way, a directional print, you want to have it so that 9 inches is going to be your top to bottom and 10.5 is going to be your width. So the pattern's written so that it's height by width. And then for my accent, which is cut at 4 by 10.5, for this bag I chose this nice light blue. And the interior, I'm also cutting 2 of them, and I'm cutting that at 12.5 by 10.5. I wouldn't use a directional print on the inside, but if you wanted to, it's 12.5 is the height and 10.5 is the width. I like to just use a simple one for the lining. This one I just have a light blue to stay in the blue theme. Now she's provided us with a little diagram on how to stitch all of our pieces together so that when they're all sewn together, your exterior pieces, if they're directional, they're in the right direction. Now we have our interior lining. Of course, I'm using different bags for my examples today. I also have a nice blue accent. Now my main fabric for my exterior is not directional, but with this one, you're going to have your left piece is going to be pointing up, and then your right piece is going to be pointing in the opposite direction. So one's going to be going to the left and one's going to be going to the right. And then we have another one of our accents and our last liner. I went ahead and stitched mine all together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and she recommends that we press our seams open so that when we're sewing everything together it lays nicely. Now for the next step, you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to be sewing up both sides. Actually, you're going to be sewing up all 3 sides of the opening. Basically, you're going to be closing this all the way in, but we're going to leave a 3-inch spot for turning. So what I like to do is I like to have these pieces match. So what I'll do is I will put my two seams together and nest them as if we were quilting. You can use a pin or you can use the clips. And I like to put a pin in there, and I like to do that at every intersection just to make sure that when I sew my bag and I turn it back around, I don't have, all my seams will match up. See the seam line here? This is one of the long edges where we stitched it all together, and I have it match up here. You really don't want it to be off right there. And pinning helps ensure that everything lines up nicely. Like I've told you before, I'm really not a big pinner, but when it comes to certain situations, it's best to pin. And if you want everything to line up neatly when you're sewing a bag, you must pin or use clips. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to be stitching. I'm going to start at this end, and she recommends that you backstitch as you go around, but we're going to be boxing the corners, so it's really not necessary to backstitch. But one of the things we need to take into consideration is when we get to the other end here, we're going to need to leave a 3-inch opening. So this is where we're going to turn our bag inside out at. And I have green pins and red pins, so what I like to do is I like to just pop in a different colored pin where I want to stop sewing, so that way it catches my eye and I notice what it is, because sometimes I just get sewing like a mad woman and I won't stop. The other place we need to leave openings is in this accent piece. This is where we're going to be putting our drawstring, so we need to leave openings on both ends. So what we're going to do, I'm using one of the friction pens that it goes away with the heat, or you can, since it's going to be on the inside, you can use a mechanical pencil or one of those dry erase ones you use in quilting. You could just mark it with pins also if you'd like, but for this part I prefer to mark it with a pen. I like to put my ruler right on this open seam where the two seams meet, and then we're going to mark it. She tells us to mark it at 1 1/4 inches and then at 2 1/4 from the same seam. So holding it right here, I have 1 1/4 inches and then 2 1/4. Now if you'd like, you can put pins in each of those little slash marks so you know you need to stop. But when you get to these, when you're stitching it around, you definitely want to make sure you backstitch, because there's going to be a little bit of, we're going to be putting our drawstring through there and we don't want the seam to pop. So there's going to be a little bit of a force on that seam. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now since everything is equal and it's all been sewn equally, it doesn't matter if I'd started on the cupcake side previously and now I'm going to the lining side. I'm just going to line it up on the seam, mark my 1 1/4 inches and then my 2 1/4. So basically we're going to have a 1-inch casing. Now it's real easy to skip the step of leaving the casing. As you can see here, I forgot to mark it before I stitched all the way around. So I just took my seam ripper. I went back to the sewing machine and I put an extra seam here just so I could have that back tacking to keep it from popping open. And then I just went ahead and I used my seam ripper and I took out the stitches in between. I ended up doing that on both sides. And here's my opening that I left for turning with back stitching so that the seams don't pull out. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and box our corners, because this bag, as I said, it's going to be sitting flat. It's going to sit flat on the table or on the couch next to you, or however. It allows you to have more space if you have a gusset in the bottom of your bag. So you have all this extra room right here for whatever project you have in there to sit nice and flat. Now we're going to be doing the same process for all corners. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab two sides, each of the exterior bags like this. And you're just going to kind of zhoosh the fabric. So you want to have a seam on top and then this seam on the bottom right here. You want them so that they nest together, just like in quilting. We do this a lot. you just kind of rub it with your fingers until one seam is laying on one side and one seam is laying on the other. Because once again, we don't want to have a crooked seam on the bottom. It's all one fabric, but you really don't want to have, you know, your bottom seam here and then the side seam up there. You want to get them as close as you possibly can. Okay, so I have this laying flat. My seams are nested. I'm creasing the edges a little. And I'm going to use one of my square rulers to have the 45-degree line on it. I'm going to line up my 45-degree line on this right-hand side. And what we're going to be doing is says that we're going to be marking it at the 1.5 inch mark. So here's my 1.5, and I want to push that up until my 1.5 is at the tip of my fabric. And what that's going to mean is you're going to have your corner where the two ones meet, and then you're going to have 3. So you're going to be drawing a 3-inch line. So it's really easy. If you just get your line, your 45-degree line on there, and here's your 3-inch mark. If you just slide it up until your 3-inch mark hits the edge and your corner's here and your 45-degree, and then that gives you at the 1.5 inch mark. So once you have those points lined up, you have 1 inch, 3 inches, and 1.5. We're just going to draw a line, once again using my friction, straight across the ruler here. And this is going to be the line we're going to sew on. And to make it easier for myself so it doesn't come undone when I go over to the sewing machine, I'm just going to put a couple pins. You could put pins at the end, at the tip where you're going to be cutting that part off, but I kind of like to put it on the main part of the bag to hold the bulk. So you're going to go through the same process for both of your main outer bag corners and also your lining corners. So let's do one more corner just so we can see that again. You're going to separate your fabrics. This is the lining now. I like to draw the lines on all 4 corners and pin all 4 corners before I go to the sewing machine. This is the long outer seam on my bag, and this is the top where the hole is, which will become the bottom of the inside. What I like to do is I like to work from the shorter side. It just seems to be easier for me, and I have less bulk to deal with. So I just separate my 2 fabrics. I wiggle it till my seams line up. Sometimes it helps to open the seam, but I like to just have one going in one direction and then the other one going in the opposite so that I can feel those seams. Do a little finger pressing on the edges just so everything sits nicely. My 1.5 inch, which is the mark we're using today. Now remember, it's going to be 1.5 inches on this side of the bag and 1.5 on that. So whatever line you're using, that's double the size of that is what the bottom of your bag is going to be. So if you were to want a 4-inch bag, you would want to use the 2-inch mark at the corner to mark your lines. So 1.5 inches, 3 inches on the side, 45 degrees lined up. I think that's one of the best tips you're going to see, is that lining up your 45 is what's going to help you make sure that you have a nice straight line going across and that everything's going to be even for you. Not all tutorials will give you that tip, so that's a really good one to remember. Okay, so after we've done all 4, we're going to go ahead and take it to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch straight across this line. Now I've gone ahead already and stitched on all 4 of my corners, and then you're just going to leave about a 1/4 inch or more, and then just going to trim off that excess. So here it was before, and then like I said, you just trim off this excess, and you can save this if you're going to do the little itty bitty crumbs. You can pop the seam open, or you can just toss it. So I've done that on both of my outer fabrics and my lining fabrics. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn my bag the right side out through the hole I left in the lining when I stitched it all together. You'll have to excuse my raspy voice again. It seems it's terrible allergy season down here in Florida. The pollen counts are extremely high. Once again, I have my plastic crochet hook that I'm going to use to pop out my corners. And let's see how well I did matching up my seams. It's pretty close. Okay, now we're just going to tuck in our lining here about 1/4 of an inch, because that's what we stitched around when we stitched it all together. You can press this, you can put pins, you can use clips, but then we're just going to go ahead and use a sewing machine with white thread, and I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch stitch along here. Okay, I went ahead and stitched really close to the edge, about 1/8 of an inch. It caught both pieces in my opening, and that now my hole's all sealed up. Now we're going to go ahead and just tuck our interior back into our exterior so we have an actual bag. And we're going to want to go ahead and just roll the lining just under so that we don't see any of that white. And then I'm going to go ahead and iron this edge down just so it's nice and neat. Okay, I went ahead and I ironed it, so I'd rather have this little lip of blue on the inside than have the white peeking out on top. And I also pressed my side seams. So our next step is to we're going to be making the casing. So we need to find the opening on both sides. I'm just going to go ahead and mark mine with a pin so that I can easily see it. Now we're going to have to mark all the way across and all the way around the bag for our casing. Now what we can do is we can take our acrylic ruler of any kind you have that's going to be long enough, and we can just line it up, and we can take any type of utensil that's writing implement that's going to disappear. You can use chalk. You can use, well, this is the friction pen that goes away with the iron. You can use something that washes away. Or what you can also do is if you line up your ruler just at the top of it, you can take washi tape and make a stitching line all along it, and then just stitch just below the washi tape. And then you won't have anything other than the tape, of course, to remove. Just line it up with my pins and my ruler. And then I'll just stitch right along the bottom of that, and I also want to have one down here at the bottom of it. You can use blue painter's tape or masking tape or whatever that you might happen to have. I don't really recommend Scotch tape, but if that's all you have and you want to do it, maybe touch it to the pant leg of, your pant leg or your fabric bag or something, just to get rid of a little of that tackiness out of it. If you have a 1-inch ruler that's 1 inch wide, you can just lay it down there and draw down both sides. It's whatever's going to work for you. You want to get it as even as you possibly can, but when we pull a drawstring, it's going to be all bunched up and you're not going to see if you were off 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. But it's gonna be noticeable if it's off too much. You really don't want crooked lines off like by a 1/2 inch or anything. Plus, it's a good way to use up all the washi tape you might be collecting. I know washi tape can be a very popular craft item for many people. I think I might be one of the strange washi tape collectors because I have 3 rolls and it came in a pack of 3. See how our tape lines up nicely on the other sides? So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to stitch on top of, above and below so that it's on either side of this casing and create my 1-inch casing. For me, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with the white thread I've been using all along. I could switch to a light blue thread, but I think since this is nice and light and mottled, it'll be okay. But you might not want to be, if you were using like a black fabric, you might not want to use a white thread unless you want that contrast on there. So I went ahead and stitched my channels. They just go all the way around. Now as you can see, I did not stitch it like this and make the channels because of course you want to be able to get into the bag. If you have one of those a free arm on your sewing machine, you can just put it in and stitch it all the way around like this. And if you don't have that, what you can do is you turn your bag inside out because your markings are going to be on the outside, and just put it through your sewing machine and lay it on top and just stitch it around like this. Just keep an eye on your line and just follow it all the way around. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to have the ties or the drawstrings to pull on. Now for mine, I'm going to go ahead and use twill tape. You can use ribbon, and in the pattern she also shows you how to make it out of fabric, matching or contrasting fabric. I really prefer mine to have just the twill tape or ribbon. A lot of people say it's not professional and it's not a really good bag unless you use fabric. Some people just like it and they like that sound when it goes shh when you close it. But a lot of times with fabric you do have to wear it in, but it's really tough to open and close it, and it doesn't always close all the way. So I just like to go ahead and use twill tape. You can use shoelaces. It's just nice and tight. I know things aren't going to fall out, and then I can always take it and I can wrap it around. I can put a little overhand knot, and then I can hang it up where I like to hang my project bags. Or you can also use it as a carry handle. So I just go ahead, I like twill tape. So now there's a special tool that you can purchase to put the ribbons and stuff through the channels. I just use a safety pin. I like to fold my end over, and then I just go through both thicknesses, close my safety pin, and what we're going to do is we're going to first go around one way, and you're going to have both tails coming out one side, and then we're going to start at the other side and go around. And it's just as easy. Now if you look, there's going to be a piece here that this bottom piece is laying down flat and this top piece is folded. So if I go like this, it'll just slide in there nice and easy. And then you just scooch it around. Anyone who's made drawstrings for jammies or backpacks or anything has done this before. And then just be a little careful to make sure you're going underneath and you're not popping back out anywhere. And then we're going to come back out where we went in. Now I like to hold both ends so I don't accidentally pull it through. Can you tell it's happened before? And then you have to do it all over again. So I take my pin off. Now if you wanted, you could fold these over and stitch them so they don't fray. Or you can go ahead and stitch them right here. But I went ahead and I just let mine fray. It doesn't bother me. It depends on what you're going to be doing with this. I kind of just like the natural. I like the way it frays. So I just go ahead and do a simple knot. And pull it tight. Now you can, at this point, you could put some fray check on here to stop it from coming undone at all, and it won't have that frayed look. Now that's coming out this side, so now this time we have to go in this way. So I find it so that it is the folded part on top. And it's just the same process. Now we come here, we just make sure, once again, we're going past it. It's a little bit extra in here now because we have another tape in there, twill tape. And since we used a 1-inch chamber here, a 1-inch tunnel, however you want to look at it, it makes it a lot easier to get everything through. Once again, do my overhand knot there. And it's really that simple. This pattern is an amazing pattern. It makes it so nice and simple. I love the fact that there's a contrast on top. There are some patterns that will have you put the tunnel as a separate piece of fabric right on top, but that's just extra steps and extra fabric, and it becomes bulk when you pull your ties together. We have that little pop of color from the inside, so whatever your lining fabric is, you're going to be seeing it on the outside. And then since we did the gussets, we have that nice flat bottom. Everything's going to stay nicely. Anytime we're not using it, since this one I did not use any interfacing on it, it can just fold right up. I can put it in a suitcase, I can stack it on my shelf so I have extra project bags, and I'm all set to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish off all of these bags. And these will be in the shop this weekend. I have a few other drawstring bags already in there, and I have some more that need to be included and need to be listed, so you'll be able to see all of those. So if there's anything that you're interested in, please go ahead and take a look at my art fire shop. Maybe I'll give you a little parade of bags at the end of this video. So if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. And that lets me know that you like to see these types of videos. If there's any other tips or tricks that you know when you make these bags, please go ahead and leave them down below in the comments. I'd love to see them, and I'm sure you'll be able to help anyone else who's making these bags. I love when everyone gets together as a team here and we help each other out. There's been so many of my videos where someone has chimed in with an extra tip that I'd never heard of, so it makes it a lot easier for me the next time I make my projects. If you want to see a sneak peek of the bags I'm going to be putting into my shop this weekend, go ahead and stay tuned and I'll have a little parade for you. If not, we'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me in my craft room. Bye-bye. Alright, so these are some drawstring bags that I'd made previously that are going to be also going into the shop this weekend. If there's one you see that you absolutely know you've just got to have it, you love it, let me know in the comments down below and I'll pop it in the shop and reserve it for you, and you can grab it whenever you're ready. Otherwise, just please be patient with me and they'll be going up in the shop this weekend. So some of these are from that same pattern that we're using. Most of these, it looks like I used a black liner. We do have some Halloween fabrics. This one has pumpkins. Look at the eyeballs. They're fun. I like the spiders. Halloween things, I like the colors, and I like the fun parts of Halloween. I don't really care much for the scary things. The pirate guy's my favorite. And then just some love. Now these are still drawstring. I just did these a little bit different. They're made like an actual tote bag with a narrowish strip for the bottom and then your main fabric up top. A lot of these I used for these. Let me see, for these guys I did use the fabric for the drawstrings. And for these guys I used like a nylon paracord type material. I don't think this is an actual paracord. I think this is one of the things that came out for kids that are similar to it, just not as stiff. Burgundy on the inside. Some of these are very colorful on the inside, and some of them are just a plain color. A basic solid. These will all be ironed before they get shipped out to you. Sometimes when they're sitting in a stack, before I get them in the shop, I like to go ahead and give them a good press. I like to get them all nice and neat when I list them in the shop. Then I tend to put them in a plastic protective sleeve so that doesn't get any kind of dust or anything else like that on it while they're being stored. Which usually doesn't happen anyways, because then I put them inside a Rubbermaid tub and I cover that with a towel or a blanket. So they're really extra protected so nothing gets on them. And then of course the ones I just showed you I was making. They're all finished. Everything's nice and done. So thank you for hanging out with me while we made these drawstring bags, and I will see you next week. Bye!